And we're live.
Hello.
I'm still laughing from our pre-show conversation.
That was a pretty good conversation.
Well, basically,
I'm sad that wasn't live.
Yeah, well, it does seem that like you were expecting this to be at 7 p.m. rather than 7 a.m.
Yes, now you're telling all my secrets, are you? That's why my hair is pulled back, and I got ready in about like 2 minutes because I thought it was going to be tonight, not this morning.
So, like, you are a depasteurized wife. Or a deconstructed pastor's wife, which sounds a bit
yes.
It's like Krista was saying, he doesn't know about all the religious terminology and all that. And it's like, no, I don't. I have no idea about all of this weird kind of North American stuff you do with religion. So what? Yeah. So explain North American religion in 1 minute.
North American religion. Okay, we're going to start at the beginning.
Magic Marie, if you could please explain.
Oh my God, I am not that smart.
You have 5 minutes.
I just listened to the Dalai Lama on a road trip the other day, and that I could tell you like a little bit about Buddhism, but like not much.
You were on a road trip with the Dalai Lama?
Yeah, he was great. He was great.
Okay, I have to say though, one of the books that I absolutely adore is, I think it's called The Pursuit of Joy, or it has the word joy in it, with the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu.
Oh, I have to read that one. That sounds great.
That book, get that. I'm looking at your name. Get that book, Magic Marie.
It doesn't say that on mine anymore. Oh, it does down there. Oh, okay.
So phenomenal book. But where Tim was going with this is, you're a deconstructed pastor's wife. You talk a lot about love and vulnerability. You're very open about talking about sex to make it something that we can openly discuss and be free and talk about without any kind of shame or guilt. But yesterday you posted something on Facebook about vulnerability, and I kind of honed in on that because I want to ask you more about that. Why is the discussion of vulnerability so important to you? And you kind of made it a little bit your life mission along with love.
Wow. Well, it can be super complicated or super simple in my mind. I'm going to go with the super simple, and we might branch out a little bit. But to me, vulnerability is when we're interacting within our world, because we're full of emotions and feelings and experiences. When we come to a person, we come up against like their emotions and experiences, but we only have our lenses to work through to understand them. So if we're always hiding our feelings and emotions and how we're doing in life, you're never inviting anybody else in to what it's like to be human, right? Because to be human is we're feelers, we're emotive people, we have experiences, and we need to share. And so if we're always hiding those things, like what religion basically taught us to do, is to just show up in your Sunday best and just put on that face and that front and not let people in, then we can't create avenues where love can flow. Then it just becomes this big roadblock that we're all just walking on a path to nowhere. And it seems to me that making those connections with other people within ourselves is the most important way that love can flow between humans. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What has motivated this theme of your life? What inspires this theme of your life?
Well, that's the complicated part. As a kid growing up, I didn't ever feel love. I come from my childhood was really bad. Both of my parents were drug addicts, alcoholics. And I just never felt love until probably till I met my husband. I didn't know I knew what I needed, but I didn't know how to get it because I'd never been modeled it. I'd never been taught it, but I knew that there was something more that I needed to feel human, to be validated in who I am. And then becoming a Christian, I came into this like area of life where being a pastor's wife, especially, like I didn't just like become a Christian. I became a Christian, and then fairly quickly, my husband moved into the pastoral track of ministry. So now I'm not just a Christian in a church. I'm on this like trajectory of like, oh, you're going to be a leader, and people are going to look to you, and you have to exemplify a certain kind of life. And so that was early in my marriage too. And so both my husband and I basically grew up together. And I'm just trying to think where to go with that. It became really suffocating that I couldn't be who I was inside. Everything that I was inside, the church told me was wrong in many ways. Like I used to love rock and roll music, and I loved partying on the weekends, but not like partying. You know what I'm saying? Like I just loved to live. I loved life. I loved fantasy and vampires and stuff like that. Like I just loved creativity, and it seemed like the church really took that and said, this is the only good creativity you can do right here in this little stream. This is what's acceptable. And so I threw everything out. Like I burned all the bad CDs and books, and really became a very religious person, and wore that pastor's wife cloak really well. Like I served in every ministry. Like youth ministry became like a really big deal to me. And like up until COVID hit, really, like youth ministry was really important to me. And so in that process, I really lost who I was. I really lost the things that were important to me, that brought life out of me. And in that process, in that time frame, I had kids. Like we had lots of fun. Like life was good. It wasn't bad. I don't want to put that out there that it wasn't bad at all. Like there was lots and lots of good things, but it was very narrow and very focused in that this is the only good way to be. This is the only good way to live. This is the only way that Jesus is accepting of you. And this is what God requires. And then as I started to deconstruct, just everything that I'd stuffed down into myself started bubbling up, and like, what about this? What about this? And I could see that there were other people around me who were doing all the same things, who were like stuffing it in, who were disagreed with things that were going on in the world. But nobody's talking. Nobody's saying anything. Everyone's quiet. No one wants to rock the boat. And I'd spent so long building up relational capital by being a good pastor's wife. Are we allowed to swear on this show?
Oh, yeah.
Good. I spent so long building up capital that at one point I was like, fuck it. It's time to spend the capital now. Because these are all these things that I'm having a problem with, things that I think that aren't right, things like purity culture, like when Donald Trump came into power, all these things like this. There's so many things to talk about here. Nobody's talking about it. And we're just walking around pretending like we're perfect, or we're glorifying ourselves in our imperfection because it makes Jesus look better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Why this excites me. And I want our audience to know, by the way, Marie is from Canada. Tim is from the UK. Of course, I'm from the US. So this makes this conversation even more interesting to me. But Marie, why is this so important to you?
Because if we can't be who we are, if we can't express the things deep within us, it's like we're walking around lying to everybody and saying, just shut up and don't express your shit either. Right? That's what it is. So when we can be honest about ourselves, when we can show up and be brave, like Brene Brown says, and express those things inside of us, sometimes we're struggling, sometimes we're on a high or something. But if we can just be human, it releases the people around us to be the same. It releases them to an experience of life that is authentic, that gets them in touch with themselves, that allows them to begin to think like, hey, there's more inside me that I need to deal with, that I need to get in touch with. Because when we do that, we heal. We don't need to apply religious bullshit to that pain. We need to get into that pain and look at it and get into those parts of us inside and befriend them and become the parents that they needed. We need to say that to the other person that we interact with. You know, we need to model in a way that it's okay to be human. It's okay to feel. It's okay to struggle. Today you're depressed. That's okay. Let me sit with you. Let me walk with you. And in those moments, in that validation of the other through your own pain, we open the floodgates of love. Because we're saying, you're okay. You're okay. Your circumstance or your experience right now sucks in the moment, but you're okay.
What do you say to the conversations or about the conversations where everything you're talking about feels really unfamiliar and uncomfortable because that's not the way many of us were raised? But God said this in the Bible, but God said, and you have to live this way. What do you say about that?
Well, that really depends. That's a big question.
I know
that
it
really
is.
depends
I don't think the Bible mentions rock and roll.
It's a big question that I want to hear you answer, Marie.
That really depends on the context. So sometimes, like, I'm not going to come in, blow someone's world up if they're still sticking to the Bible like it's life and death. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit with them in their moment, hear them, and I'm trying to understand why they still hold on to those religious things and what is it about that for them that needs to hold on to that. That's what I'm going to go to more. I'm not going to go to like, well, I don't believe in the Bible anymore. I'm not like, it's not necessarily my place to do that. But sometimes I will, if I feel like I have relational capital with somebody that I can spend a bit. Sometimes I will. Like if you're my close friend, my really close friends definitely know what I think and feel in that area. Or I might just drop a little hint here and there, you know, like the Bible's not all you think it is kind of thing, and just let it be. Like I don't need to control or manipulate anybody in their process and journey. But by me saying, hey, this is my story and this is what I found and this is the journey I'm on right now. And maybe that relates to you, maybe it doesn't. But if you want to listen for a couple minutes, I mean, I'll tell you. It, like the no pressure. That's kind of who I am, is like no pressure. Unless you're really hurting someone, then I'm going to stand between you and that person and, you know, become a flaming fire angel, whatever. But yeah, I think sometimes it's just questions, asking questions, and then it leads to another answer. And then you can ask another question and it just gets the person to think.
Tim, I have one last question and then you can.
Am I going to get a question to answer about?
I have one last question. And then, is this, Marie, about freedom.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Because in Christianity, see, my voice is still like thinking it's going to be the 7 a.m. live or 7 p.m. live. In Christianity, we're told that we have freedom, but we don't. It's all fear. A lot of it is fear. I shouldn't say all of it. A lot of it is fear-based. They're afraid just to be human. And so for me, it is about freedom. It's about freedom of expression, freedom to be human, to feel and voice those feelings, voice our brokenness, so that we can become our own best friend. It's about freedom, not having to worry that, hey, if when I go to church on Sunday, to be dressed the right way, smile the right way, or do all the right things, when inside I feel like I'm dying. Like, to me, that's not love. That's love. Love sets us free. Even the Bible says that.
So, like, now the show's almost over. What was the first thing that you like? Because I'm understanding this deconstructed. Basically, you've moved away from the Stepford Wives style kind of Christianity that's so common in North America. It's not really the same even in Europe necessarily. But what was the first thing that you started to do or think about again that started, or did it all just suddenly thought all at once everything's like coming back? Or was it like you started listening to rock and roll on the radio in the morning or something like that? What was the first thing, and how did it start to, and what was the last thing that you were kind of thought, I'm going to now talk about this, I'm like totally free, so to speak?
Okay. So as my kids were growing up, I wouldn't say this is like the start of my deconstruction at all, but I just was like the whole question about Halloween. Should we do Halloween with our kids?
Yeah.
And we read all the things about it. And then I got to the point of like, okay, this is ridiculous. On what, like, there's one day in the entire world where kids can dress up and go ask for candy and they'll get it. Why would I as a parent want to deprive my kids of this amazing experience? Right. And so it was around that time, they were like maybe 5 and 6 or 5 and 7 years old, maybe. And I just thought, this is a very normal human thing. This has nothing to do with religion. We're not celebrating witches. We're not like promoting demonism by letting our kids dress up and eat candy. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we started, and then I just started listening to some of the old music I listened to. A conservative Christian would watch this and be like, see, there it is. There's that slippery slope.
It was Elvis, Marie.
Halloween.
Was it Elvis? Just tell us.
It was Elton John. Yeah.
Elvis? No. More like Aerosmith.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh.
And then you went and started making love in an elevator all the time.
Yeah.
Or to an elevator.
Yeah, there's some stories.
Yeah.
And then so it's just like freedom just kind of started to creep in a little bit in ways that were sort of acceptable with some Christians, but not all the Christians, right?
Yeah.
And then it was about 9 years ago now, my mother-in-law got really sick with ALS. And my mother-in-law, her name was Diane. She was an amazing human, amazing woman. Like, she served our family so well. She, like, every Christmas went out and lots of gifts for the kids, cooked amazing dinner, Easter, all the holidays. We always made sure that we did holidays with my husband's family because my family was non-existent. And she just served so well, but she wasn't a Christian. And we had many debates about, like, ultimate truth. And she was very esoteric. And so she got sick and she passed away. And at that time, my Christian beliefs taught me someone like her would go to hell.
Mm.
And I could not stomach that. I could not. That was the initial break, was like, there is no fucking way a human like this is going to go to hell, if hell is even a thing.
Yeah.
And I got super angry. I got super like defensive because I loved this person so much. And there was nothing mean about her. There was no, just the fact that she didn't say a prayer properly, or like, it made no sense. And that's when all the little things started to come in about like, hey, is hell even real? If God is love, why would they send someone to hell? I would never do that to my kids.
I was going to say, could you as a parent send one of your sons to hell?
No, of course not. And so I started to look at it that way, like, because my kids were young. Oh, as a parent, would I do this with my kids? Of course not. If my kids, like, yeah, there was no, if they became the worst human in the world, could I still say, like, I condemn you forever to burn? No.
Because I love you.
No, because I love you. And I don't need to send a sacrifice. That's just such an old religious thinking that we don't need that. We just need love in the here and the now while life is present with us. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was Donald Trump. Donald fucking Trump. Like, I know that I've gone on about the United States being a power-hungry country, and I have moments of pure disgust for sometimes what I see. But that actually comes from a well of love, because I do love Canada and the United States very much so. And when I see something that's unjust, I cannot hold back. I have to just like, that's bad. Stop doing that. You're hurting people. And when Donald Trump came to power, and then all the evangelicals were behind him, I was like, something is rotten at the center of this belief. And everything just started to come undone. Everything. And it was like, it was shocking how fast it happened. Like, over the course of a year, everything came undone. And in that time period also, leaders within our sister churches started to basically attack us and attack my husband for the changes that I was experiencing. We became like the heretics and the pariahs that could infect the rest of the group, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked at a seminary. I worked at a seminary many, many years ago. And I remember when Brian McLaren was the heretic. I remember, and he was the first book I started. And of course, he would be blamed for my deconstruction, really. But he was the first book I opened up. But you know what he was doing is he was questioning. He wasn't even giving answers. He was questioning things.
Yeah.
And he allowed us to question and go, wait a minute. We can question. It's okay. It's okay.
It's totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about our kids. Our kids questioned us all the time. Why, mommy? Why this? Why this? Why this? And, sometimes we had answers and sometimes we didn't. And in the times when we didn't have answers, it was okay. That we don't need to have all the answers. Like,
yeah.
It's interesting to me from a sort of, I'm going to go off on a bit of a historical tangent here, but you can say it's very similar to the original sort of Reformation and how that a Catholic Church was basically selling like forgiveness for money.
right.
And a lot of that's the irony of it. It's like nominally, I presume it's a Protestant denomination that probably both of you're not Catholic, but it's got to such a level of this is the orthodoxy that it's almost like it's a Reformation of the Reformation again. And I suppose that kind of happens with all religions, doesn't it? Because so I mean, would you say that some of the North American churches could be considered cults to some extent?
100%. Oh yeah, 100%.
And like how far do they need to change? Like what changes do you think they should make?
The culty churches?
Well, yeah. Like, let's talk about the major cult.
Just listen close. Burn it down. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
That are cultish, that just have all their people hemmed in. There's no room for real human growth. You have to believe this way. This is how you have to live. Women have to wear dresses. Just burn the whole fucking thing down. That is just so pointless. It's so toxic. But not every church is like that. There are good churches out there. Definitely. I would say my husband, the way he does church and the way he leads his church is amazing. He does a really good job.
Yeah. I have a question for Tim, you, and also Marie, but I'm going to ask Tim first. I'm going to bring you into this interview, Tim. What, as an outsider, as someone from England, from Europe, essentially, what does this look like to you? What you're seeing over here in America? What does all this religiosity look like to you?
Well, it's funny because when I grew up in Watford, just northwest of London, it's a very big Muslim community, and it's always struck me that, like, certainly in the Western media, a lot of it, strict Islamic people have been criticised, and they are so in common with a lot of American more fundamental churches. And there were like moderate Muslim people who were very thing, and then there were extremists. And there's a lot of the cultish kind of more extreme American churches are very similar to the cultish extreme Islamic thing. So I'll say that's probably the best parallel in a way. But yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of time for religion in general. I would say that I believe in God, but I don't believe in any organised religion. And the joke is that's the Church of England, not an organised religion, but not Church of England. I was married in Church of England church, but I'm not really Church of England. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think religion and Christianity in general has helped the US a lot because there are lots of good values, but the problem is I'm not sure that it's moved with the modern world. I think that's always a problem with religion, and the inability to interpret like things like the Bible, and say actually, because there's lots. I remember reading like a bit of the Bible around the like the Ten Commandments, and there's lots of stuff about like cattle trading and which is no relevance to the modern world. But it's like you read it and you think, well, why are people like? This is clearly a kind of document at the time. So anyway, I'll probably get burned at the stake now for blasphemy or something.
No, I think the reason I ask is I think it's so important. This is why these discussions make me happy, and I wish they would happen more often. I want to hear from people outside of the United States what their thoughts on what does this look like to you, because I think that's so important, so that we can get outside of our bubble and realize what we're actually doing.
I think the problem is that like religion has been a problem we have in some. I mean, it's a problem in the US as well as in the UK. Is that people are replacing like Christianity and this weird culty stuff with other religions, and they're not calling them religions, but they're kind of like everybody. It's almost like there has to be something that people believe in, or else. So I'm not sure necessarily if the US got rid of all religion whatsoever, that it would be necessarily a better place, because people would just find some other weird thing to believe. You'll be the golden calf will come out in the street. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of almost organized sort of gaslighting in a way, as in like you create these structures, and it is like the Stepford wife kind of like they will replace you with an android or they'll convert you into an android. So
yeah, I mean, because to live within nuance and to live within a system where we do truly allow grace and nuance to exist, that's a really hard system to live in. It's not easy, right? Because that means that we really have to check ourselves a lot. We really have to learn how to communicate with the other person that is not like us. We don't need to assimilate them to us. We actually have to do the internal work to understand those outside of us. And that is partly what my journey is about, is doing the internal work to understand inside me, and then I can see it in other people, and I can begin to have empathy for where someone is in their journey, instead of, oh, well, that's bad behavior, or that's right or wrong, or instead of judging them on this line and metric about my beliefs, it's learning to understand them in their beliefs and why might they need to believe that, right?
Yeah. So there's two deconstructed people, which that sounds like deconstructed means removed from cultish churches.
Or depasteurized, as you say.
Yeah.
The depasteurized ones. Well, you're not you're still pasteurized. It's like you managed to keep the pasteurization.
Well,
yeah, well, at least for now. What would you say to like somebody who's maybe, I mean, it's unlikely that anybody particularly religious is necessarily going to watch this and think, oh, maybe I should. Right, what are some sources of information that have really helped you in terms of starting that journey? And are there any things that you thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that? I mean, is there a journey, building the escape tunnel out of like extreme Christianity? What kind of things do people need to think about when they're doing that?
well, first of all, just start reading the things that all the conservatives told you are bad reading.
Yeah.
Like read some Rob Bell, like read some Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr was amazing for me because there was a freedom there that when I was still very much in my beliefs of Christianity, there was a freedom there to breathe and to open up and expand. And I still go back and read him sometimes and listen to him and find life there. But I don't subscribe to pretty much anything Christian anymore, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Like I don't need to, and I don't need others to change for me either. Like, yeah, I would just say read the things that your friends told you not to read.
Yeah.
Like, give the authors a try that you were said, oh, that's heretical, or go for the heretics. Like, honestly, why did they believe what they do? Like, just listen to someone else other than the chorus that you've been listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always try.
Oh, go ahead, Tim. I want to hear.
No, I'll say I always try and look out for books either the right or the left that people have said you shouldn't read, because they're usually the best ones to read.
Absolutely.
Even things like Ayn Rand. Like you mentioned, you've ever read an Ayn Rand book on Twitter and you get like firebombed in your house, and it's just like the most ridiculous. She's not a very good writer, that's the thing, but it's like it's all right. It's not a particularly thing, and it's the same with like, yeah, why? If anybody tells you not to read something, you should read it. Is basically
Right.
the thing, because that's the only way you can find out what you believe in. Because if you read it and it's like, oh, actually this makes sense, which most books do if they're banned.
Why are we being censored? You know, why would someone want to censor you? Why would, I mean, my son.
Yeah, well, it means they've lost the argument, doesn't it? It's like the reason why books are banned is because they are worried that it might convince people to change their mind.
Yeah, my son brought home, and it's not a religious book at all, but he brought home a book and said, Mom, this was banned in the UK. And it's Brandon, is it The Doll's House? It's called The Doll's House. Who's the author? Brandon, do you know? Heinrich Ibsen, I think that's what it is. But it's called The Doll House. And so, but what it's really about is it's about, I don't know quite the story, but he's told me briefly and said I should read it. It's about a woman who left her husband in the 1800s because she was realized she was being abused. It has nothing to do with religion, but it was banned in the UK. And I still don't quite know why, but I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
They used to ban lots of stuff in the 1960s here. Probably not banned now. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, this is the thing. Like, there's lots of stuff you just don't know about. As you get older, you get more conspiratorial and more conspiracy theory. But then you realise most of that ain't rubbish anyway. So you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. Oh God, I'm turning into Donald Rumsfeld now. So.
Yeah. Tim, what would you suggest that we all read?
It depends, really. It depends. There are lots of books on the left and the right. I'm looking for more left-wing books, actually, in a way, because I've been reading too many right-wing books lately. You do get dragged whatever way you read the books. But it's like, just read, like, if somebody tells you not to read a book, then read it. I'm not going to specify books personally.
What book have you read recently that you really enjoyed?
Well, I've been listening to the audiobook of some Jane Austen things, but that's not particularly controversial. Even though Jane Austen's stories are virtually identical, it's like this free collection on Audible. But yeah, I'm not going to go into. I will do Jane Austen. Well, no, it was free on Audible, and the Midnight Library's free on Audible as well. Actually,
oh, so good. Have you read this, Marie? The Midnight Library by what's his name? Matt Haig. Matt Haig. Oh, Matt Haig. If you're not following him yet, just brilliant. He's from the UK, mental health kind of advocate. Absolutely.
I mean, that book is not remotely political at all, really.
Okay.
It's
or religious. He's not political or religious.
I mean, it's spiritual. It's actually a very spiritual book. It's just not religious as such. But yeah, we're turning into my Book Chat Live show now.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good. I love him.
It was funny, actually. Dan Holloway, who is going to be our guest next week, he was on my Book Chat Live thing. He's like,
make sure he knows it's AM.
Oh no, he's in the UK, so it's PM.
Oh, okay.
But he recommended a book and said, I don't know if I like this book, but I think everybody should read it. I can't remember what it is. So you can ask him next week what the book was that he recommended on the show. That he said, like, I think, because we were talking about like that, and the book Nudge, actually. State of Fear is a good book to read in the UK. It's a UK book about how the government here used behavioural psychology to influence people in the pandemic. Nudge is the more general book about behavioural theory, because that's a lot of the stuff that does is what a lot of the churches do and what a lot of the governments do.
Maybe everyone should be reading Nudge. I've heard this actually from elsewhere. That's a good recommendation. Nudge.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because the people I listened to the audiobook of Nudge, the very latest one, and it's actually Dan said this in I think it was in the interview, maybe after chat. It was like they spend a large chunk of the book trying to justify the stuff like you say in the first book. So because there's lots of stuff in psychology that people don't realize, and we're influenced a lot by things that we don't think we are. We think that we're these massively free individuals, but a lot of the time we're just pushed in this direction by people. And once you become aware of that, as I say, it does sound like the deconstruction thing is the same. Once you see how the sausage is made, it's like, oh yeah, you don't want to eat the sausage anymore.
Right.
Anyway, we've gone on way too long. And so, have you got anything that you want to say? Have you got anywhere that people can find out more about you?
Just on Twitter.
Girl69.
What else should I say? I don't know. Just love each other, stop being afraid of each other and ask questions. Try to understand the things within each of us, and don't be afraid to explore those deep places in yourself. You'll be surprised, sometimes horrified, of the parts that need your love and attention.
Thank you, Marie. Very good.
Right.
Thank you for being on the show. Thank you, Tim, for always being a great host.
And I'm going to play the outro now, because I'm not very good at this finishing the show bit. So, Right. Thanks everybody who watched. I don't know if anybody watched, but we'll probably get thrown off YouTube now for like saying something to you. Like somebody will come after us for that.
All the banned books that you should be reading.
I know, yeah. And I mentioned Ayn Rand as well. So Gee, Ayn Rand cannot write romance. It's funny. There's like loads of romance scene in like the Fountainhead or something, and she's just terrible. She just clearly has never. I mean, she thinks she was married for a while. She's like, so, but it's kind of like it's not really an objectionable book. It kind of says, "Oh, like rich people aren't necessarily terrible." So that's why people don't.
I'm taking it we're not live anymore.
No, we are live. No, we're live.
We're still live. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this author. Now I'm.
You said I'm going to play the outro, and I was like, "Oh, maybe he's doing that."
Oh no, I'm playing the outro now before we do get really bad.
Before we really get in trouble. All right, thanks, audience. We love you.
Bye.
Thanks, love you.
Bye bye.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.